You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
Welcome to TFM's Local Watering Hole. I am just one of your hosts here, Matthew Rushing, talking about all things geeky, and with me, as she is pretty much every single week, is the one and only Christy Morris. Christy, does it look any different here now that we've hit episode 301?
Well, my dear Watson, I would say it does.
Oh, man. Well, it is good to be back, and we are going to have some fun today because we're going to talk about a new movie, talking about Enola Holmes, and which came out on Netflix a few weeks back. And so excited to dive into that with you. But before we do that, of course, you know, everybody can find us wherever you get your podcasts. I want to thank you so much to everybody who's been listening. Honestly, we had the best month we've had in years last month, and this month looks to be on record too. So thank you so much for everybody who's listening and downloading and all those things. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. Like I said, we're on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you can find your podcasts. If you're on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, give us a star rating review. Help people find the show even more. Those star rating reviews really help. Of course, you can find us on Twitter at TrekFM. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. We got the listeners-only discussion group over there called the Babel Conference you can find and talk to listeners from all over the world. You get the website, trek.fm. You can go over there, the contact section, send Chrissy and I an email if you want. And want to say a huge thank you to our associate producers here. We've been going for over 300 episodes because we've got more with the supplemental episodes that we've done. And thank you so much to everyone. These associate producers through Patreon, Ken Tripp, Davis Grayson, Ryan Millette, Daniel Noah, they make sure that not only does this show keep happening, but so does the entire network. And you can support us just like they have over on Patreon at patreon.com/TrekFM. We have some great contribution levels you can give at, but honestly, every little bit helps. So again, you just want to go over to patreon.com/TrekFM.
Also, I wanted to add in, don't forget, we have our official show Instagram and Twitter now as well at the 602 Club.
How could I forget? That's right. You're absolutely right. On Twitter, you can find us at the 602 Club. And on Instagram, you can follow us over at the 602 Club TFM. Both of those places, we've been having tons of fun in interacting with people, so we really appreciate everybody following us there. And that's the best place to keep up with the show, as well as, you know, we talk about and post things about what's going on in nerddom and in the movie business and all that kind of stuff to keep us up to date with everything, especially as so much has been changing these days. You know, so many movies are being pushed back and all that stuff, so we're trying to keep you up to date with all that as well. So, I wanted to ask you, before we even got into this movie, just what your experience has been with Sherlock Holmes as a character, you know, before we dive into this, because, you know, he's such a long-running character. He's one of the characters who's appeared most on screen, and so just kind of wondering what your experience has been with that character.
Sure. So I will say I've always been familiar with Sherlock Holmes ever since I was a kid, even asking my parents about it because of seeing movies like The Great Mouse Detective, got curious about detectives and everything. And so I actually have never read Sherlock Holmes stories, but am familiar with the character and that he is a fictional character, but something that's often referred to or depicted in other places. And like you said, arguably the most depicted in other places. So familiar, but not, you know, super thorough.
Yeah, I haven't read a ton of the Sherlock Holmes stories. I've read a few of them, though. And then, you know, I have seen adaptations of him from spoofs like Without a Clue with Michael Caine, and all the way to, you know, Benedict Cumberbatch's Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock that BBC did, which was so wonderful. Of course, the Robert Downey Jr. movies that they did as well. Some okay, some not okay. And so, it's a character that I'm well familiar with. And honestly, he's a character then that has inspired lots of other characters from things I've watched. Spock from Star Trek has a ton of kind of the Sherlock Holmes-ness to him, the non-emotional aspect that you get, very logical, all those kind of things. So, this is something that, like, the impact of Sherlock Holmes is felt in so many different things that we like and enjoy. So it's really interesting here because, this, I didn't know, Christy, was doing research with the movie, is this is a book first. Enola Holmes is a book series from writer Nancy Springer, and it's about Enola Holmes, who's the 14-year-old sister of the already famous Sherlock Holmes, and Mycroft, yes.
And Mycroft Holmes.
He's so forgettable. But
we don't like
20
him.
years her senior, so there's a lot of time, and there are 6 books in the series, and they started in 2006 and have gone all the way to 2010 so far. And so I was wondering, have you read any of these books at all?
No, and actually I didn't know that there was a book series until I saw the credits for the movie. So I had only seen the trailers for Enola Holmes and then seen, in the credits, it was actually a book series before it became a movie.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was aware that it was a book series, and I'm sure I had to come across it. When this series was coming out, I was working at Barnes & Noble at that point, and I ran the kids department. So I'm sure that I ran into it, but it's not something that I necessarily remember, and I never read the series. This is a series that's, a middle grade series, so kind of in the vein of like a Percy Jackson series, or, honestly, even Harry Potter is considered middle grade, not so. That's right in line with a lot of things that I've liked before. So this could be a really fun series, but I've just never gotten a chance to read it. So I think it's really cool that this comes from, some good source material. And honestly, Percy Jackson movies sucked, but the books were great. And so I'll be really interested, honestly, to kind of read the author's original take here and just how faithful they were, because this movie is actually based off the very first book in the series. And what I found fascinating is that this is really a passion project of Millie Bobby Brown, who really loved these books and read them with her older sister Paige and immediately wanted to play this role, and yet at that point, she's not old enough to play the character. And so I thought it was really interesting that this is something that she really wanted to do. And she talks to her dad about it, and they decide to try and partner with Legendary Pictures, who they did Godzilla King of Monsters, which, we covered here on the show. And they decide to make this as a feature film. So I just really think it's neat when stars really like something and are really passionate about something and help bring it to the screen, because I honestly think for the most part that really helps the film, regardless of if I love the movie or not. The passion of a star loving something really makes a lot of difference.
Oh, absolutely. Which is kind of ironic then that Henry Cavill happens to be in this, because, that's how he felt about The Witcher book series, and then campaigned to be cast as The Witcher. And then I'm sure he and Millie Bobby Brown discussed this, and he probably has a lot of respect for her kind of doing the same thing. So I think that that's definitely something you can see in a movie for sure, when someone has a passion for it and they're not just there to do a job.
Yeah, and I think, it's one of the things where the movie is benefited because she's the main character, and she's the one who is really bringing the movie to life, because it's all through her point of view. I think it really does show that she cares a lot about this character and this movie, and that she wants to be there. Like, every ounce of her wants to be on screen at every moment, which I think is really cool. Again, I think it's neat to see, you know, because, you know, we all know her from Stranger Things, and I think it's so interesting that, you know, she gets the opportunity to bring this to life, and part of that has to do with her popularity in Stranger Things, and I think it's neat to see a star use their power to do projects then that they're excited in. And you know, this might sound weird, but you remember when we were talking about Top Gun and how, you know, Tom Cruise wanted to learn the behind the scenes work and understand what it meant to be a producer so that he could do more than just act. I think it's kind of neat to kind of see that Millie Bobby Brown seems to kind of have maybe some of those same aspirations of being somebody who not just stars in things, but actually brings projects to fruition because of the things that she's interested in.
Yeah, I think we've seen through this, but also just in general when she's worked on Stranger Things and been on the red carpet for things, that she has that leadership quality about her, and clearly an interest, at least for something that she's passionate about. So I hope we'll get to see her do more things like that and not just the acting piece. But I did want to add too, I think that it's a kind of a natural progression for her to then play this kind of character based on playing 11 so well in Stranger Things, because there was a degree of detectiveness in the kids in that show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and what I thought was fun about this is that one of the reasons she's so excited about it is she really wants to kind of convey the energy and emotion and electricity of the scenes, and she actually they even talk with the screenwriter, Jack Thorne, who, if people don't know, he also wrote the screenplay for The Cursed Child, based on J.K. Rowling's original story that was turned into the massive hit stage play. This idea of kind of breaking the fourth wall, and what that really means is getting that opportunity to be so vibrant on screen and really get to improvise, something that she does not get to do on Stranger Things. So I think it's really interesting that, you know, for her as an actress, one of the things she's really passionate about is expanding her horizons and her abilities in acting. And I think, you know, it really plays out here in the movie. I think not only this a passion project, but this movie is her movie. You know, she has other people in this movie that surround her that are big names, but I think the movie works the best when she's the one on screen, because she really takes this character and completely makes it her own, and vibes it with her own personality and the personality of the character. And that's kind of what you want. I mean, you know, when you think of characters like, you know, Indiana Jones or, you know, things like that, you think of one person, right? You know, so now I think what she's done with Enola Holmes, she is Enola Holmes, right? Like, she just really, truly brings this movie to life in every way possible, and she makes it a joy to watch.
I will say, though, I had a problem with them breaking the fourth wall, and I get why she wanted to do it, and I'm glad she got the opportunity to do that kind of thing in a movie she was in. But for me personally, I would have been more invested in the serious nature of the story itself if that hadn't been so frequent. You know what I mean?
That's really interesting. Because I found some of the funniest parts of the movie is when she would turn to the audience and just be like, which is interesting because, you know, Jack Thorne writing this, you know, especially doing The Cursed Child, you know, being in a stage play, you literally look at the audience, right? And so
right. So like that makes a little sense as to why he would write that
want to
too.
do that. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that part didn't work for you. How did you feel about her in the role and you know what she does otherwise?
Otherwise, I think she's brilliant. I've always been a Millie Bobby Brown fan since Stranger Things started. So I was really looking forward to seeing her in something different, but also as the leading character and not just, part of an ensemble cast. Although I wish she had gotten more scenes to work with Henry Cavill as well, because I feel like he's also so well known that they could have kind of used the two of them working together as brother and sister more, but still kept the focus on it being her story. I will say I think that the best scenes with her are when she is working through the situation of her mother leaving. I think Millie plays that so well, showing the emotion of how a 14-year-old girl would feel to suddenly wake up and her mom, who's been her only caregiver but also best friend, is suddenly gone. So her acting chops are absolutely never in question with me. I love her. I thought the character was 14.
I feel like she's 16 because they're talking about how she's almost a woman.
Maybe.
And that's one of the reasons why with the finishing school, she's so late to the game, basically. Like, those girls would have already been there for, a few years. And so
yeah, I may have
I think you're still right. I mean, it's even more apparent, like, if she's been living with the same person and just really her mother for 16 years, for the most part, and that's all that she can really remember. She doesn't remember her brothers really being around. She doesn't remember her father. All that's been there is her mother for what she knows of 16 years. That's an intense thing. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I think she does a great job with those scenes. And honestly, I was just, I think that she's really magnetic. Obviously she can play 11, but I think this did a great job to show me that she's not a one-note character, a one-note actress. She can do anything she wants to do, and she's actually very funny. So she is somebody, I think, that has the ability to play drama and comedy, and I think she works absolutely wonderfully here in the role. And she had the physicality she needs for all of it, and I really enjoyed how well she pulled. And this is the other thing. Look, sometimes it can get annoying to see teenage kids in movies who are the quote-unquote know-it-alls or just know all these things. They can kind of be annoying, but she never plays it in a way that's annoying, which is really hard to do.
Right.
And yet at the same time seems completely competent in everything that she's doing, even when she's making it up as she goes along.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she never feels that way to me. And I think that it's apparent even from the first scene where she says where to begin, that she pulls you in with her. Even though I'm not a huge fan of breaking the fourth wall, I love Millie Bobby Brown, and I love how she played Enola Holmes.
I love when she's like, as you can tell, cycling is not one of my strong suits.
Right.
Yeah.
With mud on her face. Or actually, my husband and I both got a kick out of when she says, I'll give you 5 pounds if you change clothes with me.
Yes. That ended up being a very funny running gag throughout the whole thing. No, she's great. I mean, she really... And again, too, the whole point of this, and I think kind of elaborating on her and her what she brings to the role, is the fact that, if she doesn't perform well in this movie would absolutely suck. I mean, because she is the movie. Regardless of who she's acting with, she has to be your main focus pretty much the whole time.
Yeah, and it's like you said, though, she's so good at showing not only the emotion of the scene, like the reuniting with her mother even, but also the humor and when to kind of show the more romantic side of the character, but they still left it tasteful. Like the scene where she has to bring the Viscount back to her room. I think it was nice that they kept it like they're still kids, They're not kissing it or anything like that. They're just trying to get to know each other, and they're in a really dire situation. I thought she was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. we both on the show are unabashed fans of Henry Cavill, and we love him and pretty much everything he's done. I'm a huge fan of him, and I think what's fascinating is to see him in this movie because he's been in many different things where he's had to play either like kind of more stoic, like he does in The Witcher, or kind of turmoil emotion when he's playing Superman, or the suave character that he plays in Man from U.N.C.L.E. And so he can play all of those things, and I thought it was interesting because so many of those types of roles kind of come into play as he plays Sherlock Holmes here. And I thought he did such a great job of bringing just the right amount. And, one of the things that sets his Holmes apart is that he shows more emotion. And that, Holmes is famous for being completely detached emotionally and not being able to really be attached. And it's not until the later works from Holmes that he really starts to show any emotion. But I thought it worked so well because, this is a different iteration of the character. It is this character who's being played in a different story. It's not Sherlock Holmes' story, right? He's actually a side character. Right. And I really thought that he played it perfectly. I loved the struggle it was for the fact that he's realizing that he basically has these emotions for his sister and coming to terms with that, and that he's also going to help her in any way he can. And again, just to play all of that in the very small amount of screen time that he really does have in this movie, I thought he did really well with. And so, yeah, I mean, I would, this is one of the things where, like you were kind of talking about earlier, I think what they do with the screen time he's given and how much time they have together is perfect. But it absolutely makes me want a sequel where they two work together.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And I echo what you said, too. I think he was great with the time that he gets. I really like that they have the moments as well in the screenplay where she's making a jab at something his character said earlier in the movie. When they're talking, when she's at the girls' school and she says, emotion. What was it? Like unnecessary, but still present.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And he's kind of laughing at, oh, you remember that. I think that it definitely be really cool to see a sequel where they get to actually partner together on cases, because I like that they didn't completely rewrite Sherlock Holmes as a character. I like that for the most part, he's still the same kind of character of being very detached emotionally, and that they don't make it where Enola is now smarter than him or figuring out everything before him. Because she actually ends up getting it wrong as to who was trying to kill the Viscount. She thinks at first that it's the uncle, but it's actually the grandmother manipulating everything. And Sherlock figures it out, but she had already been through the fight scene by the time he got there. So I like how they did that.
No, I think you actually make a great point in that they do a fantastic job of not lessening her as a character, but also not lessening Holmes as a character, Sherlock as a character either. Because if you do that, you're actually hurting her character, basically. If you're wanting to show that she's almost as intelligent and just as good as a detective as her brother, you need to not make him a bad detective. Otherwise, that hurts her as a character. So absolutely, I think you're 100% right in that, and I really appreciate that they don't do that, and it does. It makes a big difference. And it also helps, too, that, Sam Claflin playing Mycroft, Mycroft is always swarmy. He definitely is not a character you like at all. Even in the Sherlock series with Benedict Cumberbatch, he's not great. But here, I think it's really fascinating to see him is that he is this character who's just basically he's all about himself, and he's all about his own name, and he's all about his own place in the world, and it makes sense that his mother and even his brother and his sister are all people who are just getting in the way of him rising the ranks in power. And, at the same time, he's not completely evil or anything. He's just all about himself. And I think they do a great job in this movie. We kind of talk a little bit later about some of the thematic elements, but I think he does a great job of playing into some of those thematic elements of, selfishness and stuff. And so perfect job for the actor. I think he nails it.
Oh, yeah. He's so, like you said, not a bad person. You can tell by both the acting and just the writing as well that it's more about selfishness and about who he thinks he should be in society, and just about following the motions of what, history in real life tells us that period of the 1860s, and to the early 1900s was like for men and for women. I think that he also is written to show the contrast in his rule-following nature and Enola's wild nature, because he constantly mentions that she's like a wildling and that she needs to be educated and she needs to be broken and reformed. And they even have the scene where Enola gets an attitude with him, and he really shoots her down when they're riding in the carriage. And it's painful to watch, but you get why they're showing you that scene, because they're two just completely different natures of people, and they're always going to butt heads.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, about, and this is what makes him different than his brother and his sister and his mother, which is that he is somebody who's all about the rules of society, to a fault. And that's one of the reasons that it's what makes him who he is. And I think it's really fascinating to kind of see that, and again, we kind of have these different characters throughout the series, throughout this movie, and it makes it really interesting to kind of see them play this out. And it plays into the themes, and kind of speaking of the exact opposite, you have Helena Bonham Carter playing Enola Holmes, and she is kind of the amalgamation of her son Sherlock and her daughter, and I think that's it makes for a really interesting character, although I will say she may be the character that I think suffers the most through just the story of this, because her story doesn't, I mean, it plays into the sense that it juxtaposes with her daughter, but what's fascinating is how much she's like her son Mycroft more than she would like to admit, and her selfishness and her desires. That part's what I think it really fascinated me to see that play out in what they do with her story.
Right, that her character is trying to teach her daughter to be independent and to think for herself and to try to cause change in the world in good ways. And then it turns out that she's seeing evidence of her mother being much more radical in the way that she thinks she should change the world, by possibly, using bombs. They allude to and never actually explain, but that's, what they're trying to tell you. And as well with her abandoning her daughter, I think that it's really, I wish they had written that a little differently, because the screenwriting is trying to portray it as she left for a greater good, but the way that she was going to accomplish that was clearly a bad idea. And then also, couldn't you do greater good by teaching your child and not leaving her on her own at really an age when they need more guidance?
I mean, this is, I don't know if you ever saw Jojo Rabbit, But this is honestly the biggest problem I have with that movie and Scarlett Johansson's character as the mother, because the same kind of thing happens. And so, I think she is the weakest link of the film for me, as is her part of the story. Even though it will play into the thematic elements, it just doesn't quite work, I think, the way that they want it to.
Right. And I will add, though, I mean, I think Helena Bonham Carter is excellent. I don't think it has anything to do with her performance.
Absolutely.
I think it's all writing. I do think, though, she is, I don't know whether she chooses similar roles all the time, though, or if she's just ends up in them. But this is similar to things that we've seen her play before many times.
Oh, yeah. I think part of it is just that it's who she is. So she is slightly typecast,
she's a little quirky,
but I think she enjoys playing many similar roles. So, no, I actually think that's all part of it. Louis Partridge, who plays the Viscount, I thought that he was a very nice collaborator with Millie Bobby Brown, and I thought they had a very good chemistry together. And I also liked that and this is something that's really important, is like they show him being smart in a different way than Enola. He has different things that he's good at that she's not good at and everything. And I liked how they complemented each other. I love how he was able to think of, putting the armor in his shirt, to keep himself safe. It was a great moment for character development there of him, again, showing that he's got it going on up here as well. He's not just a pretty face.
Yeah.
So, that was really nice. But like you said, too, just the way they play their relationship. Yes, they're younger and they have kind of this attraction to each other, but it's not about sex. It's not about that yet. It is about more of this like actual drawing together of people who have similar interests, they have similarities, and they have things in
They're
their
both
emotionally
runaways
that make them connect more than just like, oh, we're hot, so let's get together.
Right. Yeah. Like they're both runaways. She feels a responsibility to help protect him because she knows more about self-defense than he does. She can sense that he's very much lived the silver spoon life and just doesn't know those kind of things. I like that it's more about a mutual respect, and that, like you were saying, they have intelligence in different ways, where she's been taught more about, science and about self-defense and, being independent. He's really learned more about, botany and, about what it would take to, survive in the wild if he needed to forage and things like that. I thought that was a neat way to play it, and for him to actually want to go and work in a flower shop.
Yeah, no.
I thought was nice.
I mean, I totally agree with you there. I think that's something that just, it really works. I mean, again, I think what they do with these characters is they set up the ability to kind of want to see them again. And so I think, I absolutely would love, to see him again in a film with Enola and Sherlock and kind of get into some more mischief together. I think that would be really fun. It's one of the things I was really interesting, and you talked about this idea of, it's really the grandmother who kind of seems to be the problem here. And it's interesting to kind of see this time in England's history as some people, like Mycroft or like the grandmother, they want to keep England the same. They're afraid of change. They're afraid of things going badly because of the change. So we can't just say that there's not a reason for them to probably feel like that. Change isn't always good.
Yeah.
And so, whereas, you see Enola's mother, the Viscount, and his father, who want to see England move forward with the vote for women, And so I love this whole idea of like, do we kind of like stagnate? Do we kind of like, or do we stay the same, or do we move forward? Was really fascinating to me to see them kind of play this out on screen. And I thought, it was for the most part, it's an interesting theme for them to be able to play with, because this is such an important issue at this time period.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that's something that you see that's highlighted here, and I'm glad, because honestly, if things hadn't reformed for women during this time period all over the world, in America as well as England, then they wouldn't be like they are today with me having the rights that I do. But I think that they could have written it a little bit differently with how these women are trying to accomplish it. I think that it's nice that they show Enola, at least, is of the viewpoint that there's better ways to do it than violence, and that, bombing things are not going to cause good change in the way that you want. And that she was able to influence change through saving the Viscount rather than doing something like that. Obviously she wasn't directly responsible before it, because he still was the one that had to go and vote, but she influenced it. And so I thought it was interesting that they did it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you bring up, and it's something that we were talking about her mother. It's, we see her mother talk to her earlier in the movie about this idea of, trying to save others at the expense of yourself, and how you should never do that. What we see in the movie is that, and it's not just that, but I mean, it's even this whole idea that Enola kind of has at the beginning of the movie, which was like, oh, she's going to get rid of the problem boy, and you don't need men in your life, but all of these type of things. And yet what we see her do is that Enola acts on her altruism. She acts on her feelings of that, no, it's right for me to care about other people. It's right for me to be worried about other people's safety. And it's right for me to want to help them. And so, and I think there was such a beautiful message in that, because what it shows is that when we stop treating each other like enemies, and when we start treating each other like human beings, we have a much better ability to impact the course of the future for good, because we're all treating each other like human beings with love and respect. And you see that is that
right
as she helps the Viscount, they form a relationship, they form a friendship. But at the same time, it's not even just that, but his father has already raised him in a way to which leads him to want to vote for giving women the vote, right? So it's yep. Not even about an us versus them, or male versus female, or any of these type of things. It's about what we believe and what we're willing to stand up for. And I just really thought it was fascinating, because in the end, her mother has absolutely nothing to do with making what she wants to come to fruition, because her ideas, her mother's radicalism, would have done nothing but, I think, push people further in the other direction.
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's showing exactly what you're saying as well, that it's not an us versus them, or men versus women, but rather good people versus people that are resistant to change to a fault. And so it's showing that, that resistance to change can lead people to then making terrible decisions, like the grandmother killing her son and then killing her grandson, or trying to. Although I didn't think that scene was carried out well. I get what they were trying to say. And it's really sad that it leads someone to making decisions like that, because, I mean, gosh, how horrible. I can't imagine. But it's a good point to show the turmoil that all of this was causing. And that there are good people out there like the kid and his father. And, I mean, heck, Sherlock even versus Mycroft that wanted everything to stay the same as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think for me, too, one of the major issues that I end up having with the movie in general is that it's really heavy-handed in the way that it handles these themes and the nature of the themes. And I felt like there were too many times where characters were on screen telling you what you should think rather than just allowing the story to speak for itself, which this story in and of itself is already about the struggle for women having the right to vote. And so, and even having characters like Sherlock Holmes come to the understanding of maybe why he should care about certain things, right? But I don't necessarily think that you need somebody literally telling him that, because you're actually hurting the thematic message of the film by saying, no, this is what you should think. If you're writing a movie or a screenplay or a TV show, you need to allow the story to speak for itself. And I think the story, without those things, would have spoken for itself perfectly. But by just blatantly being like, no, you should think this, that moves from a movie to propaganda, and it actually hurts your message.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's how I felt as well, and why, it kind of made me feel conflicted, because there's so many things I like about the movie, but that really was frustrating. And I mean, it just, in screenwriting in general, you want to, like you and I have said many times before, have nuance and things about the way the story is told or visually things are shown to you depict a story, instead of just having a character say it in dialogue. I mean, because that's not good storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it so many times, show don't tell. And, they were showing us throughout the film and allowing the story to speak for itself. And then there were a few times where they literally just have to tell you. And, it's disappointing. And I think this is where, the juxtaposition between the selfish characters and the non-selfish characters really plays into so many times where again, this is kind of playing out on a smaller scale. The whole idea is of like what you see in Star Wars. Are you going to live the selfish life, or are you going to live the selfless life? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And what we even see is that two sides of this issue. There are people that are just willing to be selfish to try and get their way. And in fact, there are people who are willing to hurt other people just to get their way. And yet what solves it in the end is two people unselfishly helping one another because they care about each other as human beings. And that's a beautiful message. And you kind of hurt that message fully being displayed by preaching at people a few times during the movie.
Yeah, we're definitely on the same page with that. And I mean, really, too, if you look at some of the scenes where I feel like they did that, I think that a lot of the character for the school headmistress was unnecessary. Would you agree with that?
What I felt with her was really interesting. I thought that it was interesting to have her in the story because she's another character who is selfishly doing things to try and get things for her own benefit. Obviously, you can tell she's got a thing for Mycroft, right? And so, and so she's supporting him and believing in him and doing whatever he says to try and get his approval. And you kind of see that what she goes to prove is that she's the wrong type of woman who would just do anything to get a man's attention, right? Whereas again, you juxtapose that with Enola and her relationship with the Viscount and how it becomes this mutual thing together. of them helping one another and growing closer together, not because of a selfish reason, but for purely just like we like each other's company. You know, they learn to like each other. And it's not all these games and this politics and everything like that. And so I see what you're saying, but I felt like that was one of the places where the movie was kind of showing us more than telling us, you know, about what we should probably believe about what makes for healthy womanhood and what makes for unhealthy womanhood. So that's just where I came at it as a dude, you know, and I thought, oh man, that's actually kind of a message I would want for my daughters, right? If I had daughters, I would kind of want them to see that, you know, trying to earn a guy's love and respect or everything by just doing what he wants and, like, you know, all those kind of things, that's not what I would want my daughter to do, right? So.
No, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, because that helps me understand a little bit more why she was there and not feel so lost as to what her presence was for.
Yeah, well, and I did like that they gave her a little bit of nuance, right? That she knew her mother and that they had been kind of friends once, and they chose two different paths. And what's interesting is, what do we see? They both chose extremes, and neither of those is the right choice.
Right.
So I think maybe that's the other reason she's in the movie, to help kind of show that the two extremes, that's not the way to go. We probably need to find a middle way.
Absolutely. I think that's a good way to prove it as well, is that it's the mother versus the headmistress in the way that their characters went, and then neither one was right. I love that.
Well, I'm glad it worked. So that's just how I ended up seeing it. So, I wanted to ask you about this. I thought one of the best things about the movie, honestly, was the score. I'm really a huge fan of Daniel Pemberton. You know, he did The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. He did Spider-Verse, Man from U.N.C.L.E. He's done many other things. And I thought, you know, this movie needed a score that was fun and plucky and lively, and he delivers on every level you want. And I've enjoyed listening to it, and it just fit the vibrancy of the character of Enola so perfectly. And so I was really glad to see him do this score. And he, you know, again, he's done scores that I love. So he continually is, I mean, he's honestly becoming somebody that I really look forward to hearing what he's going to do. And none of them sound the same. They all have very different sounds, and, you know, obviously in very different worlds too. So I thought he did a great job.
I'm with you there too. I think that it definitely, for more than anything else, to me, gives you the old world vibe, like Victorian era kind of feel to it, but also has that plucky nature to, you know, accentuate Enola as a character being this girl who's still kind of a kid, but is growing to being a woman and going on adventures, but also having some serious things she's dealing with. So I absolutely, he's becoming someone that I really love too. And I'm glad you mentioned Spider-Verse, because absolutely a different world, different feel, and in every way to the score for that movie. And I loved that as well. So I think that he's somebody that we should be following the way people would follow John Williams, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you know, absolutely. You know, he's a composer to which I'm really appreciating the things that he's doing. And it's, you know, it's fun to be able to call those type of things out. And so, well, all of that together then, Christy, I'm really kind of interested to see then where you land with your ratings for Enola Holmes.
So I think that we both had some really good points as to why we enjoyed the movie, but some areas where it could be improved. And it really came down to the screenplay itself, where the critiques were. And so based on that, I give it a 2.5 out of 5 bicycles. Because there's definitely still a lot here to be enjoyed. And I really love Millie Bobby Brown and the fact that she was so passionate about doing this movie and this character. I just think that there's some things with the screenplay that could have been tweaked to make it an even more powerful story, and to make it less of that feeling of, like you and I were saying, the propaganda or the, issues with her mother abandoning her and things like that. I think that it could have been even better if it was changed somewhat in those storytelling pieces.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Part of me wonders if any of that is ameliorated in the book because you have more time, not just 2 hours. And that's not any excuse, you should be able to find a way, I think, to do that in you should be able to find a way to do that in any screenplay, effectively. And so, and if you can't, that's your fault as the screenwriter. As we talked about the movie, I think I'm a little bit more generous than you. I think I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 because I found the movie exceptionally charming because I enjoyed Millie Bobby Brown's performance so much, and I enjoyed, like you were talking about, and we talked about her interactions with Henry Cavill, and it kind of made me excited about the thought process of them doing another one of these together where she would get more time to spend with him. And it was a fun movie, and it's been so frustrating, this year because there's so many movies that we wanted to see and we haven't gotten to see. And this was a movie that was meant to come out in the theater and because of COVID got picked up by Netflix. And so it was just nice to watch a fun, delightful film for free, I mean, I pay for Netflix, so it's not really free, and it's new, so I think that part helped. But yeah, I think it's, if you've got family, it's definitely a fun movie to watch with family and to be able to talk about these things together. And so, it's delightful. And I would say maybe the reason I give it 3 is because it was a good enough setup that I would like to see a second film without some of these things we talked about. And I think, man, you put Millie Bobby Brown and Henry Cavill in a case together, and I think they just knock it out of the park. I think it'd be so much fun.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing to its credit is that you and I would like to see a sequel where the two of them get to do a case together, because he seems to play a really nice older brother, too. I don't know. It's nice.
Yeah. I think we both just want to hang out with Henry Cavill and have a beer, is what we're saying. So,
yeah,
that would be great. So, Christy, we now are at the part of the show where we do our recommendations, and so kind of wondering what you have to recommend this week.
So, actually, my recommendation this time is going to be a motivational speaker that I've been loving more and more of her videos, and I follow her now on Instagram. Her name is Mel Robbins. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but it's Robbins. And she came up with this way of just thinking about your decisions differently that we don't usually look at. And so it seems like such common sense, but then when it's explained to you in her way, you're going, oh, okay. So for example, she shared something the other day that I wanted to share that's, it said, why I'm wearing hot pink leggings and Crocs on Instagram. And she said, it's because I knew that the act of putting on my leggings, which would influence me to possibly do my exercise that's good for me and I need to do, would motivate me more to actually follow through with exercise than if I had put on jeans that day. And so just that thought of putting on my leggings instead of my jeans is going to motivate me more to do the exercise instead of making the excuses as to why I don't need to work out. So she just shares a lot of things like that I really find inspirational and motivating, especially on days when you're thinking, oh, geez, it's Monday, I don't want to. So I really recommend checking out Mel Robbins.
Nice. Well, mine is a little bit different. I'm going to recommend HBO Max because I've just been enjoying it so much. There have been so many things that I've been coming across on there. And in fact, just randomly looking at the films that they have, I went through the entire library just looking at all the movies that they've got on there. And there were a lot of movies just that I've just never had the opportunity to watch. And so, like, I just watched the other day Training Day with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. Such a good movie. So, like, there is so much good stuff on there that I've been enjoying. In fact, now they're going to be moving all the DC shows over there that were on DC Universe. And so I really think that it is exciting and it's a lot of fun. So again, I've just been, I honestly also just watched the Philadelphia Story with Katharine Hepburn and Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. They've got that kind of stuff on there too, so it's totally worth it. If you haven't checked it out and you need a new streaming service, HBO Max is definitely a good one. So I would encourage you, if you're looking for some good stuff, there you go. So, Christy, though, if anybody wants to catch up with you, see what you got going on outside of what we're doing here on the 602 Club, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Bespin Bell. And I wanted to add to, of course, aside from the 602 Club, I do a couple of other shows. I do a show with my friend Teresa Delgado called Sabers and Spells, which is on the Skywalking Through Neverland Network, Skynet. And we talk about lots of geeky stuff too, so I hope you'll check us out. And I do a show called Planet Leia on the Fantatrax Network. We've been on a bit of a hiatus, but hoping to get back to that soon. So I hope that you'll check that out as well.
You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd Vero under the name @Rushing02. I'm here on the network doing Literary Treks as well as The Orb with Chris Jones. Both shows, one, we're talking about the books and comics of Star Trek. The other is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. You can find me over on the Nerd Party Network doing two shows. One is called Owl Post, doing that with Drea Kaufman, as we talk about Harry Potter each and every week, one chapter at a time. And last but not least, doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills. Every week, it's just a brand new Star Wars topic, as it's a Star Wars show. We love talking Star Wars. We're having so much fun right now going through the entire season of The Mandalorian before we get to season 2 with our commentary series. So check it out. But we want to say thank you so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?